Howdy, welcome to the Maze MasterCast. I'm your host, Ben Wiggins. It is a beautiful day in Aggie land, and we have a great discussion for you today. Eddy Badrina is CEO of Eden Green Technology, an ag tech venture which is changing the way we grow food and feed people. Previously, he was co-founder and president of BuzzShift, a digital strategy agency for mid-sized brands and organizations. It's a great name, too. Eddy and his co-founder had the unique opportunity to sell BuzzShift in 2016, reacquire it, and sell it again in 2021. I want that job. Sell companies and reacquire them and then sell them again. He's been as high as number 2 on the Aggie 100 list. Eddy has over 20 years of experience in strategic planning, marketing, and PR, including roles at the U.S. Department of State, executive leadership at a White House initiative, and director-level positions in 2 successful startups. During his time in Washington, D.C., he was on the Smithsonian Institution's National Advisory Council for the Filipino-American Centennial Commemoration. We are stoked for this conversation, and I hope you are too. Let's get into it.
We welcome Eddy Badrina to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. What is your favorite superpower?
My favorite superpower is X-ray vision.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What would you use it for?
Oh man, I've always had this thought of like, if you could combine X-ray vision with seeing where cash is, like you could, and if, the superpower of flying is just whatever, de rigueur. But if you could fly over and you could just kind of see where people like store cash, especially the bad guys.
Yeah.
There's some pretty good restitution there. That makes for a pretty good,
True.
Helper of society if you can do that. It's bizarre. I know.
Kind of a Robin Hood thing.
Yeah, totally.
Where did you grow up and what did your parents do?
So I grew up in Houston, Texas, born and raised. My parents are Filipino immigrants.
Yeah.
And my dad was an entrepreneur. And then my mom was a nurse. They're both retired now.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was your very first job?
Technically, it was installing a sprinkler system on my lawn.
Okay.
Yeah. My dad said, "Hey, we're going to install a sprinkler system this summer." And by we,
easy work.
Yeah. But by we, he meant me.
He meant you.
Yes. And so I laid out all the lines, dug all the trenches, put the sprinkler system in. It's still in and working to this day. So
okay.
That was my first job. I consider that first entrepreneurial job was actually running a daycare. I don't know why my parents let me do this, and I don't know why the parents of the kids let me do this.
Right.
But there were 3 boys that I basically babysat all summer, and I had activities for them, lunch, snack time. I was, 13 at the time. You do what you need to do to earn a buck.
Yeah. And you ran this out of
my
your
house.
family's home?
Yeah, just for the summer. And then babysitting is usually like a once a week gig, right?
True.
I was doing this 5 days a week for the entire summer.
Yeah. Okay. That does sound like a daycare.
Yeah.
All your friends went to UT. Why come here? Why come to A&M?
I'm a bit of a contrarian.
Yeah.
And honestly, I didn't want 4 more years of high school. And so if I wanted that, I would have gone to Austin.
Yeah.
Great. But I wanted something different. I was in the band in high school. And so my sister told me about the Aggie band. I had no idea what it was.
Yeah.
I did not know what I was getting myself into. I found out that to be in the band, you had to be in the corps. So I not blinding, but pretty unaware of what FOW was and what the Corps was. And then back in my day, it was pretty intense. I don't know how it is now. I haven't talked to a lot of the cadets here now, but back in 95 when I was a freshman, it was rather intense. So all to say is I don't regret it at all, but I was just a bit of contrarian. And once I was in, there was no way I was going to fail. There was no way I was going to quit. And so I just saw it through.
What's the most intense story that you can tell on the air?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I can. Okay, so here's one I can probably tell on the air. There's like statutes of limitations.
Yeah.
So when I was a freshman,
When you begin with that,
Yeah.
it's it's going to be good.
so when I was a freshman, there was a junior, and I won't mention his name,
Sure.
but we all liked to, ironically, rollerblade around campus. And this was right about the time Kyle Field was being renovated and going from turf to grass.
Yeah.
And
I
so
remember.
one night we rolled, and this was an off week. I guess didn't have a game, but we rollerbladed from our dorms to Kyle Field, hopped the fence, got the turf that was rolled up, cut pieces of turf out for ourselves,
Oh,
hopped the fence, and then came back. And I still have that piece of turf. One of my buddies has them framed because he got a yard line piece of turf.
all right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So that was pretty, it was high stakes poker right there.
No question.
Yeah. Yeah.
What happens if you get caught? Do you get suspended? Do you get
So that's the great thing about being in college. You don't really think about what happens if you get caught.
Yeah.
You just kind of do it, and mea culpa, right? It's always easier to ask forgiveness than ask permission.
Yeah. Oops, my bad. We found ourselves on Kyle Field. What can you do?
Yeah. The fence was only 12 feet high.
Continuing in the contrarian vein, you later applied to the Bush School
Yes.
without telling your boss, George Bush.
Correct. I think it was more of an independent streak. I wanted to do it on my own.
Okay.
So I was an intern at his personal office in Houston.
Yeah.
And I was actually in the band during the groundbreaking, and just thought, man, that would be a great place to go. Mostly because, true story, I had never been to my academic counselor my entire college career until I was about to graduate. And his name was Fidel Fernandez. And Fidel,
I know Fidel Fernandez.
there you go.
My wife met him at Blinton.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So Fidel, being just the wise guy who he is, he just said, "Hey, Eddie, you're about to graduate and you have no idea what you want to do." Like, no. And I was graduating in 4 years, degree in psychology.
Yeah.
And so he said, "Why don't you apply over there?" And I said, "That's good. I'm taking some international relations courses. That might be pretty cool." And I said, "Well, when's the application due?" He said, "This Saturday," or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
So I said, "Well, what do I need to do?" And he said, "Well, you need to take the GMAT and then turn it in and get your application in and recommendations." And so I think this was on like a Thursday. I literally took the GMAT 2 days later on a Saturday, and then I got my apps in and all my recs in the next week.
Yeah.
And then I got in, but part of it was speed, but also part of it was just I wanted to do it on my own. So I didn't tell President Bush that I was applying.
Huh. All right. And then you did something that you have described as shuttle diplomacy between the Middle East and DC. What is that?
So it's a bit what it sounds like. So it's just going back and forth in between players and agencies in Washington, D.C., bringing communication, and not just communication, but the nuances of policy and how they're practically implemented to folks over in the Middle East, our allies, our partners.
Yeah.
And then bringing that information back and then parsing it out for all of the agencies and the stakeholders in the U.S. government. So one piece of information from, call it Jordan, could have multiple implications for Department of Energy, for Department of Commerce, for National Security Council, for the White House, and then for all the agencies, on the intel side. Okay. And so to be able to take that information back and then to be able to synthesize it and say, "Oh, this is what it means here. This is what it means here. This is what it means here. And here are the policy and legal implications for it." That's what I did.
What was the most challenging piece of that?
I think the most challenging piece was, and it's what my superpower is, which is synthesizing a lot of information.
Oh, okay.
In a very fluid context, and then finding out what the leverage points are and then what the communication points are.
That's a great superpower.
I don't know whether it's nature or nurture, but I seem to have it. And so
from running a daycare when I was in when I was in school, I learned about synthesizing a lot of information in a very fluid context.
Yes. I think about that more. A lot of it had to do with my experience here at A&M and the Corps of Cadets, because as a freshman, and then you're also taking, you're also in the band, you're also taking classes, you're also doing extracurricular. You have to figure out what your primary mission is, and then you have to be able to figure out how to prioritize that in what you're doing day to day in the context of all sorts of competing interests and messages.
True.
And then in the Corps, at least, you have to do that with someone.
Yeah.
Like, we couldn't be alone. But on the quad, it was known as the BQ Brigade, or the Briefcase Brigade. And we, unlike a lot of the CTs, we had to walk in pairs at least, if not more. Okay. The CTs could just run across the quad alone if they had to get to class. We always had to be paired up. It was this weird, I don't know, distinctive of the band.
What was the reason they gave you?
You just always have to be with a buddy.
Okay.
Right. And so if you're always having to be with a buddy, you have to coordinate schedules. You have to convince them why it's a good time to go now. Then find leverage points. Oh yeah, you can go take a nap in whatever Sterling Library while I'm. So it was very much a learning environment of how to negotiate, how to be diplomatic, because I had to go with them everywhere. If our upperclassmen saw us alone, we were toast.
Mm-hmm. Quite literally.
Yes.
So you're doing stuff in Washington. You're applying all these lessons that you've learned here. Why did you come back to Texas from Washington?
So that is, that's really the heart of who I am. And it was my marriage. My marriage was a trash heap in Washington, DC.
Oh.
And my career was going on an upward trajectory, but my marriage was totally going downhill.
Huh.
And so in order just to save my marriage, my wife and I just had to move. And I'm sure we probably could have made it work, but our community and just our community of faith around us just said, hey, this is not the best place for y'all to thrive. And your marriage, your relationship is supposed to last way longer than any administration. So it's probably in your best interest just to go back to Texas, and we're going to send you there and commission you to go back to Texas. And so they did that, man. When we moved in 2006, we had a contingent of folks who helped us pack up. And then, right outside our house in Northern Virginia, they just all gathered around us and prayed for us and cheered us on and sent us back to Texas. It was a very meaningful experience that I can remember with great clarity to this day. And it was a total game changer for our life and in my trajectory.
What was it about the environment that, without getting into the personal issues, what was it about the environment that they felt like was so bad for you?
I was 28 when I ran a White House agency.
Yeah.
I probably should not have been doing that.
Okay.
There was a lot of power and a lot of autonomy for someone so young. And I would say for myself who wasn't at the maturity level that I needed to be handling all of that power and that responsibility. So I think for myself, at least, I'm not, and this is only for me, a lot of other folks have done it successfully, but for myself, it just wasn't a good recipe to have that much autonomy and responsibility. But then also to be married with a young kid and to take all of that back home for granted, if you will.
If you were to get that same job now, you feel like you would handle it differently?
I wouldn't do it. If I had to do it all over again, this is the most ironic part of it all. And the White House Initiative job, so I was the executive director of White House Initiative for Asian Americans. That's basically President Bush's Asian American W's. Asian American spokesperson / surrogate
Right.
for domestic policy. Ironically, if I had to do it all over again, I would have never taken the job. Even as much as it's kind of promoted my career now,
Sure.
would have never have done it. Can I do it now? Absolutely. Yeah. As busy as I am, I really only try to do day trips. If I have to spend the night over somewhere, I will. But if I can schedule it all, I'll do a day trip. I'll leave as early as I need to leave, as long as I can get home and sleep in the same bed as my wife, and hopefully put my kids to bed.
Yeah.
And so,
how many kids?
3.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was not my mindset back when I was 28. I mean, it was travel.
Just
Work's most important. Gone all the time.
And yeah, I could see how that would happen. I mean, you're looking at heads of state, across the table, and it's big stakes.
Oh yeah, it is big stakes. But now I look back at it, and the stakes are ever bigger and ever higher with my relationship with my wife and my kids, and so that to me still, I think that's what I learned from that whole time, was not how to operate in the highest levels of power. Also, I did learn that, but the most important thing I learned was, hey, the family is the most important thing. Yeah. That's going to last forever. So,
yeah. You were doing digital strategy before that was really a thing. What made you decide to get into that specifically?
Seeing gaps in the marketplace. Okay. So my business partner, a guy named Cameron Golly, who's still running BuzzShift, by the way, he and I got together and very quickly saw the gaps in the marketplace. And the gap was, you had all these traditional agencies doing TV, print, and radio, which was fantastic, but they would bolt on websites, they would bolt on social media, they would bolt on SEO, paid search. And we just saw a need for someone to think about it holistically and strategically, and create a really holistic go-to-market strategy. And so that's how we started. We saw gaps in the marketplace. We felt the gaps. People were coming to us and asking, "Hey, can you do this? Can you think about this in a bigger way? I'm trying to implement this into my overall marketing, and my current agency or my current consultant, my current marketing director is not doing it well. Can you help us think through that?"
What was your discovery process like? Because I could see how something like that would turn into just an endless parade of feature requests, some of which are valuable and some of which just end up being a mess. And something that we're dealing with in our business is you're trying to standardize a menu in some way or another, and you end up providing 100 different things for 100 different clients. So how did you figure out, especially in the early going, what was most important?
It was really, so we had this discovery workshop that now it's evolved, but at the beginning it was a strategic workshop that was actually the entree to every client we ever had. And we charged for it. Yeah. And so it had dual purposes. One was, as we did more strategic workshops, we realized we were losing money. We were spending way too much time on it. So we started raising our price. Okay. And that actually filtered out a lot of clients who, if they balked at that price, then they were going to balk at our ongoing services. Sure. Right. So that was the first purpose. But really the more important purpose was to help them understand themselves. And so it was probably a half day to a day of just asking questions till they were blue in the face. Right. But most business owners don't know what they want.
That is true.
They think they know what they want. But if you start asking really good questions, you'll find out they have no clue what they want. And they have no clue who their audience is. They'll say, "Oh, we can address everyone, if
everyone.
Professional services, right?
Or a nightmare.
Right? We can address almost any business under, 5 million in revenue or whatever."
But do you even want to?
One, do you even want to? And two, can you really do that? Can you really?
Yeah.
And so through that discovery workshop, we really helped hone down what do they actually want, which is a question that everyone ought to be asking themselves, not just business owners, but like, what do you really want? can you communicate that and articulate that well to yourself?
Yeah.
And then to others? And then who are those others that you're trying to communicate that to?
Right.
You answer those questions, you can focus pretty well.
Right.
And I mean, for an entrepreneur who sees the world, I mean, it takes a certain mindset to be an entrepreneur.
No doubt.
And that mindset is one of optimism and like, I can take on the world and I see so many gaps. It really takes a third party to say, hey, let's hone it down and focus. And that's why co-founders are so important.
Yeah.
Good business partners. One will have this great, there's a book called Rocket Fuel.
Yeah. Traction.
Traction. Yeah. So visionary, integrator.
Which one are you?
I'm the integrator.
Same.
In my last company, I was the integrator. In this one, I'm the visionary.
You're the visionary.
Yeah.
Okay. I was interested in that because I heard in the way that you were answering the questions, some of the answers that I heard were more visionary, some that I heard were more integrators. So you sound like a guy who could do both. How do you sell the same company twice? Where do I get that gig?
My accountant asked the same question.
I bet.
So, we built BuzzShift from scratch, started in 2010, totally bootstrapped it, which I would not recommend. Bootstrapped it. And then we got it to a size and to a brand notoriety and reputation where we started to get noticed by bigger firms.
Sure.
Regionally. And so in 2016, we had a chance we had unsolicited offers to buy the company, and we took one.
Okay.
So 2016, great. We were all on the same page. I think it quickly turned south for not because we all intended for it to go south, but just because as the acquiring company got a hold of ours and really saw its potential, they were of dual minds. Half the company, half the leadership team wanted to use it as a business unit and it be profitable, which is what we were based on. And the other half wanted to use it as a biz dev unit.
Okay.
To pitch to their existing clients.
Okay.
A business unit is measured on profitability in quarters. A biz dev unit is measured on delayed gratification.
Sure.
And business one, probably in that range, probably 6 months to a year was a sales cycle.
Yeah.
And so when you have those dual minds and not focused, you tend to pull the company apart, or at least shift apart the business unit.
And they never could agree on nobody won.
No, it was just back and forth, which is almost worse than pulling it one way or the other, right?
Sure.
So about 11 months in, they said, man, this is not working. And we said, we totally agree. They said, do you want to buy the company back? And we said, well, what do you mean by the company back? Through negotiations and discovery, we realized that we could reobtain it for a small amount of money.
What was you don't have to say the dollar amounts, but what was the percentage of the price that was originally paid?
$1.
Okay. All right.
So we got it back.
Yeah.
And we got all of our old IP back. We got our website back. We got our clients back. And we basically divvied up the employee team. Most of them went with the acquiring company.
Okay.
And then a select few came with us. And so we built that team back up. But because we had so few employees and we had all of our client base, we were overworked, but we were profitable.
Yeah.
So we had that thing back up running in probably 60 days.
That's fantastic. If you had been the acquiring company starting 3 months before they acquired BuzzShift, what would you have done with it? How would you have handled things?
I would have run it as a business unit.
Yeah.
But I think I would, knowing what I know now, and I don't know if I can completely fault them. It was a heady time and it still is, honestly, of the digital wave for businesses. A lot of businesses are still on the uptake.
Sure.
On how actually to implement that.
Yeah.
And so I don't fault them necessarily, but I think if I were them 3 months before, I would say, what exactly do we want to do with this? And let's all be on the same page before we go acquire this. they just weren't. It was obviously they weren't. So that's what I would do differently if I were them.
You were talking about companies still being on the uptake. You recommended a book in a previous conversation. Was it the Digital Blueprint or some marketing agency blueprint?
Yes. It was the Marketing Agency Blueprint. That's a great framework for building an agency, and not just a marketing agency. Thinking about it, I think there are a lot of consulting companies that can benefit from that. There are a lot of professional services companies that can benefit from that.
And so agency or professional services company, just being defined as a company mostly that is offering service to other businesses in terms of helping them execute or
intellectual property services.
Yeah. Okay. I got you. And now you're the CEO of Eden Green.
Yes.
And that is a vertical farming startup. And you're also running a Spotify playlist with 11,000 followers, which is very impressive, and doing TV interviews.
Yeah. So Eden Green, vertical farming ag tech startup. It's been a wild ride, past year and a half, almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's been a fantastic opportunity just to grow my leadership skills, as well as just to be able to lead a team in an industry that's just getting started. It's super exciting. I'm very fortunate for the opportunity.
Yeah, that's great.
But along with that opportunity comes this doing things like this, right? Interviews and podcasts. It's really funny that the most fun I've had, I found myself cracking up after this, was I was doing an interview for Cheddar TV, which, if it's an online.
I've seen the interview
business. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you saw the interview.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I did see it.
So if your listeners go look up Cheddar TV, Eddy Badrina, Eden Green, but, you'll see this sort of fake background of our vertical farm.
Yeah.
It's because I was doing the interview from Colorado. I was on spring break, and that was the only time they could do it. It was a live TV interview.
Yeah.
So we had everything set up, fake background, and they actually said, hey, you need to put a fake background unless you're standing in the greenhouse, and the greenhouse is way too loud. So they're like, hey, yeah, good. Fake background, go. So we did that, but I'm doing it from Colorado, and I'm sitting there like, I don't know, an hour before the interview. And I thought I had an hour to spare. I had brought all my equipment, kind of like what y'all have here, not to this extent, but had all my equipment.
Yeah, you had your stuff.
I had my stuff, was ready to go. Yeah. And I get this text from the producer, and he's like, hey, you ready to go? Like, yeah, I have about an hour to spare. And he said, actually, no, you're coming on in 5 minutes. And I look, and I had scheduled the time for Central Time, but I was in Mountain Time. I was in Colorado. So I'm just setting everything up. I'm sweating profusely.
Yeah.
I find the basement room in the house where we were staying. I set it all up, and I get on the producer, and I can see on the one half of my screen is the live TV going, and then the other half of the screen is, actually on the audio is I'm listening to them, and they're like, okay, set it up. I'm looking at the feedback for the video, and the lighting's horrible. Like you got the fake background that's super light, and then I look like I just full of shadows.
Yeah.
So
the Bond villain.
Yes,
look.
the Bond villain look, right? And they should have distorted my voice instead of been the anonymous CEO. So I'm kind of positioning it around. They're like, oh yeah, this looks better. Turn a little more left. Okay, can you go down a little more? Sure. Down a little more. Yeah, sure. Down. I'm kneeling. Like the laptop and the webcam are all like stacked up on books and like leaning on a water bottle and all that. And I'm kneeling, and they're like, perfect. So I do this interview like I'm on a pew in a Catholic church, right?
Right.
Praying to Mary, like, okay. Yeah. And so I'm kneeling, and I do this interview for what seemed like a half hour. And my back was aching.
Legs are going to sleep.
My legs are going to sleep. I'm trying to be, active and alive and hit all my talking points. Right. In meantime, and I have shorts on, and I've got a white shirt. This is kind of my uniform. So everything like
You're sweating.
Sweating. So everything above here looked decent. And I think I pulled the interview off.
It's like the duck.
But everything around me is a total
trash.
I mean, talk about a yard sale of it was horrible. It was horrible.
Right. Well, I'm glad you survived. Let's move to some rapid fire. What do you consider your most valuable failure?
I was working with an Aggie, a guy named Tyler Merrick. He runs a company called Project 7 out in Costa Mesa, California. But back in the day, he was in South Lake.
Okay.
And I did some biz dev for him, and it was a phenomenal failure, I think, on both our parts.
Yeah.
We didn't look at the sales cycle long enough. I was coming off another gig. It was not good. But I think what it taught me was that relationships matter more than anything. Tyler and I had such a good relationship, and he respected me enough as a professional to say, "Hey, Eddie, this is not working out. Like he gave me, we had set clear guidelines and expectations for what I should hit. And my relationship with him was good enough where I could look him in the eye and say, yeah, this is not working out. I've not fulfilled my part of the agreement, and we ought to just go separate ways." And he and I have a good relationship to this day, even though, I mean, it was hard. I know it was hard for him. It was definitely hard for me, obviously, for him to let me go.
If you could have anyone as a mentor for one day, who would it be?
I had a mentor here in college. His name was Ford Madison. He passed away. I would love to have him back for one day. Yeah.
I love that. What is the most important advice you would give to yourself exactly 5 years ago?
Get a good accountant.
Oh.
And I think the broader statement is foundational work is everything.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have success, or they build up wealth, or they, build up a great business, but their foundation is shaky, either in terms of mission or vision, or even just tactically shaky in terms of accounting or legal, right? Financial structures, especially for entrepreneurs, not having a good holding company and sort of the legal structure around LLCs. Yeah, that's what I would say to myself is get a good accountant.
Okay. What is the book you've given most often as a gift, other than the marketing agency blueprint?
Yes. It's a little booklet. It's called the Redemptive Entrepreneur's Playbook.
Huh.
And it's produced by an organization up in New York City called Praxis Labs. And it just talks about the difference between exploitative companies, ethical companies, and what they call redemptive companies. And it just is a good practical guidebook on how to implement and either create from scratch or implement a redemptive framework into your business.
All right.
Yeah.
If you could have a billboard anywhere with anything on it, where would it be and what would it say?
It would be in Dallas, and it would say, "Your image does not matter. You are loved."
It's a good place to put it.
Yeah, it is.
Anyone you'd like to send Good Bull?
Good Bull. I would like to send Good Bull to the Bush School. I think my time at the Bush School was so very formative. I was in the second class of the Bush School. We had a very diverse, small group, small cohort, which we still keep in touch with to this day.
Yeah.
And we came from all different backgrounds. And it's fun to see where everyone has ended up.
Yeah.
And they just deserve some kudos.
Yeah.
For creating that environment for us.
Good Bull to them. Good Bull to you, Eddie.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me. This was awesome.
Thanks for listening to our discussion with Eddie. Let's get into our MasterCast top 3 takeaways. First is the enormous benefit of an imposed buddy system early in life. Having to communicate with another person, another young person, to coordinate often on short notice with high stakes and dealing with the consequences when you screw it up. I'm sure that was a life-altering hassle at the time, but really I feel like the Aggie Band did those young men and women a huge favor for later life. There is no substitute for experience in that respect. Our second takeaway is the fool's gold of serving everyone in business. So many entrepreneurs fall into this trap. And the truth is, you cannot serve everyone. Even Apple, even Facebook don't serve everyone. Some people still don't have Facebook in 2021. And a lot of people don't own a single Apple product. Don't kid yourself. You can't serve everyone either. And in fact, the more specific your audience gets, the more you will thrive. So please stop trying to serve everybody. Lock in on one specific audience, one specific archetype, and come to really understand their needs, their hopes, their aspirations. Our third takeaway is the underlying truth that none of us have it all put together. All of us are a hot mess in some way or another. We have different strengths and weaknesses, and all of us handle certain situations really badly. This is why self-knowledge is so important, because just like with serving everyone, you as a person cannot do everything well. Whatever it is that you want to prioritize in life, it's going to involve sacrifices elsewhere. It just will. You can have it all, but you cannot do it all. There's an important difference. Follow Warren Buffett's advice and start saying no more often. And now I will close us with a quote. Maybe happiness is not something you inherit or even choose, but a highly personal skill that can be learned, like fitness or nutrition. Naval Ravikant. Thanks for listening. Thank you for watching. We appreciate your support. Drop us a like below and feel free to leave a comment if you wish. We appreciate positivity and constructive feedback. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on our latest episodes and bonus content. You can also take us on the road using your favorite podcast listening app. We have those linked below. If you'd like to know more about Mays Business School or our guests, visit mays.tamu.edu/podcasts. Talk with you soon.